All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, August 5th, 2016, and this is Before the First Cup of Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Friday, everyone. It is 74 degrees with light rain here in upstate New York. I was just looking at the map, and it doesn't look like it's anything major, but they did say we were supposed to get a good amount of rain today. So where did we leave off on Wednesday? Of course, Tuesday. Wednesday we had Mr. Clint Richardson on as guest, and Thursday we were lucky enough to get Mr. Brandon Turville for the first time this summer to come visit us and have a good discussion. But now we're going to delve back into the big, bad, scary technology stories. So where do we leave off on Tuesday? We titled the show AI, Big Data, Autonomous Weapons, Hate Speech Algorithm, and 23andMe. And yes, YouTube did not find that title advertiser friendly, and it was yellow boxed. But that's okay. But we did talk about all these technologies. That hate speech algorithm was pretty interesting, where they were going to be able to scan now comments and all kinds of postings on the internet and determine 90% of the time if you were abusing somebody online with your lack of political correctness. Doesn't that bother you a little bit? Like, we definitely have the thought police out there now, but don't worry about it because it'll get even better. We got all kinds of absolute insanity that's broken loose over the last 2 days as far as news stories. We found, too, that 23andMe has been collecting all of your genetic data. Once you check that box, paid them $199. They took your genetic data that you gave to them freely. They told you that your Nana had blue hair and maybe some creaky knees, and that she came from Estonia. But in the meantime, what they were doing in the background was they were taking your DNA and putting it into a large database with 1 million other people to be able to compare and contrast. They also shared it with the National Institute of Health and who the hell knows who else, probably for your federal dossier as well. And they were able to now start coming up with biopharmaceuticals, or what were they calling them? Nutraceuticals? No, they actually had a name for them. I don't know, it's early. Actually, the bumper caught me by surprise. I only have half a cup of cold coffee from the last hour and 2 cigarettes, so that wasn't good. Usually I make my run back upstairs quick before I go live. But they have this new term that they've been using in the trade agreements, namely the TTP and the TTIP, referring to biologics. That's what they are. So these new biologics medicines that'll be able to target your DNA to be able to come up with these miraculous 21st century cures that, of course, just 6 months ago were considered unethical to be doing in children, but now it's anything goes. Step right up, become part of this cohort program, give it up to the machine, and hope that your sacrifice will help save millionaires of the future. Yeah, that's about where it's going to go. All right, so let's hit some mad science stories now from the last 48 hours. And actually, there were a few of them, though, that I didn't get to from last week. But here's a good one. Talking about unethical, researchers have now found a way to make people smarter. So little Johnny won't be able to compete unless you get your treatment. But you're not going to like this because it's not pleasant. What? All right, so if someone told you can get smarter, but it's not pleasant, would you do it? Good question. As we learn more and more about the brain, because the Obama administration has dumped so much money into studying the brain as part of the Brain Initiative and the Connectome Project and setting DARPA down that path to be able to cure PTSD in returning soldiers. Yeah, the brain is important. But the brain is also important for many other things. Don't forget, once they can control the brain, they can control you. We found out just recently there were two stories. One, they were able to suck literal images out of people's heads when they were thinking or talking and display them on screen. The other was to be able to not only suck that little voice out of your head and know what that little voice is saying, and they can type it out right now, but to take that text and make it text to speech so that little voice actually would talk to them and tell them what you were thinking. I mean, not a good thing. This is very much like futuristic dystopia to me, for someone to be able to not only see but hear what I'm thinking. And I have to tell you, my brain is my last bastion of freedom. Of course, my car on the expressway, but my brain is where, even if I'm smiling all those years in corporate America, even though I'm smiling, yeah, my eyes do give me away because I'm thinking something else, especially if it's like 10 minutes to 5 on a Friday and little Johnny won't shut up in the meeting. All right, anyway, as we learn more and more about the brain, we're getting better at figuring out how to supercharge it. And one of the most promising and at this point popular ways, at least among certain communities of DIY body hackers, and we've talked about those crazy body hackers before, splicing electrodes under their skin, cutting it open on a Friday night, to directly charge up our mental abilities involving headsets that use direct electrical or magnetic pulses at specific regions of the brain. Now, remember too, we looked at those dopamine headphones, and I haven't heard much about them. Those were supposed to come out like in May, I believe. If you remember correctly, they were headphones that zapped your vagus nerve right alongside your ear and was supposed to give you like this whole brain boost and everything, and they were going to use music along with it. And it was supposed to be pleasant, though, so I don't think they're talking about these dopamine headphones. But brain stimulation is not a new technique. Neuroscientists have been experimenting with various forms of brain stimulation in its modern form for at least 15 years. But now, due to both a growing body of available how-to knowledge and the ability to purchase brain-stimulating devices off the internet, the devices that can do this work are more accessible than ever before. More importantly, more and more research confirms that a little bit of electrical or magnetic stimulation really can make a difference. And, I don't know about you, but a long time ago I'd actually heard about, and don't do this at home, I'm saying it right now, I had read about idiots out there utilizing their TENS unit, those electrical stimulation units, to make themselves quote unquote smarter by doing it, putting those electrode contacts on their head. Don't do it. Because here's my thing, anything that's going between those electrodes is definitely getting zapped. And I mean, you can crank that puppy up there. I don't think that's such a good idea. Your brain is all based upon electrical signals and zappies and chemical. But I mean, it's electrical too. I wouldn't be zapping my brain. I had a friend out there. He's like, "Oh, let's see what happens." I'm like, "Don't." What kind of defective person are you? If you're going to start, and I mean, I know I've experimented on myself for years. It's the only way you're ever going to get any real information, especially if you've been sick for a long time. And nobody in the healthcare industry, number one, believes you, and number two, can figure it out. But on the other hand, sending cascades of electricity through my brain is not the type of experiment that I'd sign up for. Well, lo and behold, it looks like that's about what you're going to be getting when you go into the doctor. Because there's all kinds of new developments on giving you electrical shocks. It says indeed, electrical as well as magnetic stimulation shows promise in the enhancement of cognitive functions, says Ruhab Dubdab Battleday and Anna Catherine Brem, Oxford scientists whose research techniques and drugs that can boost brain power are being developed. So what happens when you wire up your mind? Well, step right up. Today, brain stimulation has become so popular that on July 7th, researchers published an open letter in the Annals of Neurology cautioning DIY users about some of the risks involved in brain stimulation. See, so I wasn't that far off. There are crazy people trying this shit at home thinking that it's going to make them have superpowers. Now, this is where we're starting to cross that line of science telling us crap with all these fantastical stories about great research they've done. And oh my God, look at all these things that are happening. Except a lot of it's vaporware. A lot of it is in a dark, dank hallway with doors with scary pictures on them, and you hear muffled screams at the end of that hall. Don't do it. Basically, stimulation of the brain involves targeting specific brain regions with these pulses in order to quiet some mental processes, as well as to activate or enhance some others. And there's good evidence that doing so can improve your memory, pattern recognition, the ability to pay attention, mathematical abilities, and more. So college kids out there, pay attention. And this is frightening. And then we're going to put a story out here, and I'm telling you, don't do it. But we're going to put a story out here and tell people how great it is. It's going to make you new and improved. I don't know if I didn't know any better. This is another one of those experiments to see how many stupid people we can get rid of. Kind of like that Pokemon Go thing. Yeah, let's all go out. Zap our brains to make ourselves more competitive in the marketplace. What? It's absolute insanity. And guys, this is going to be Friday of Insanity. Every story that I've come across over the last few days has just left me in utter and total disbelief. Research has also shown, and I have a story on this in particular, that stimulation may boost athletic performance as well by making athletes feel less fatigued. And that is just the start of what we are getting to know about the stimulation's cognitive enhancement benefits in healthy people. But as Battle Day and Brem explained, only a small piece of research is focused on what the stimulation does to a healthy population. So there is still far more to learn there. Ding, ding. That means we talk a good story, but we really don't know what we're doing. So even though we're spinning this up to be able to sell stock shares in a new IPO that's probably going public somewhere, wink, this doesn't mean do this at home unattended. From a medical perspective, researchers have found stimulation can be a treatment for depression, ding, anxiety, and other disorders. And I'm sure that they're going to throw PTSD and Parkinson's in there, right? We already got the deep brain stimulation that they were doing for some of that, as well as the depression and those little implants. I think it was Parkinson's that they did the live brain surgery on National Geographic TV back a few months ago to show you how great it is. And they don't even need those anymore. Wait until you see what they're coming out with now. Brain stimulation is more of a shotgun approach rather than a scalpel approach. Michael Weinstein, a neuroscientist at Wright State University, or Wright State Research Institution, told me in November of 2014, and those indirectly or inaccurately targeted regions might usually be harmless, but not always. So again, don't mess with this at home. As the open letter from worried researchers explained, users might alter brain regions that they did not intend to touch. So you really start randomly bumping into walls or talking backwards. Like, I just can't even get over that they would be promoting this in any way, shape, or form, especially in the mass media where there's just so many people who just don't think. So many people who would just be all like, yeah. And then we just find out 53% of the population right now in a Pew Research study had said that they would be ready to embrace brain implants. Well, now look. Now you can do it at home. No implant needed. Just a few zappity zaps, and look, you're better than Johnny. Anyway, number 2, something you might not have intended was to have different reactions to stimulation depending on what they are doing at the time. If you're reading a book and zapping yourself, your brain does different things than if you were watching mindless TV or playing a video game, killing things. The same pulse may have different effects depending on what is happening in your brain. And number 3, it may also boost one's ability that comes with an unexpected trade-off where one mental process is sacrificed for another. So maybe you can talk, but no longer sleep. I don't know. This is just insane. It's still early in the days for the science, so don't let us fool you with our authoritarian articles that we write. We really don't know what we're doing. We're just doing human experimentation and then reporting back to you that, oh, there's some interesting results and we zap people's brains. But hey, we're getting ready to bring cadavers back from the dead. Actually, I don't think they were dead. They were just brain dead. But remember, they were going to shoot some stem cell brain balls into, I don't remember how many. I think it was something like 18 patients that they were taking from the United States over to India, where they don't really have rules and regulations like we have here. And then they were going to shoot some stem cells, some brain stem cells into their brains and see if they could bring them back to life. Yeah, that'll be a good one. But anyway, it's still the early days for the science. And they want to caution users that they should not treat this stuff lightly. So if you don't know what you're doing, this is not a safe thing to play around with. Well, phew, if they hadn't told me that, I would have never have guessed it. Researchers like Weissend tell self-experimenters to steer clear until we know that things are safe to zap yourself. But the potential that we see so far is fascinating. Cue Spock. The future of brain zapping, well, it's not just neuroscientists and body hackers that see the benefit of brain stimulation. There's also the U.S. government initiative, go figure. And this is at DARPA's little cousin, the IARPA, Intelligence Advanced Research Project activity, they say, but I still say it's agency, which is supposed to find ways to, quote, improve reasoning and problem solving in healthy, high-performing adults. And Battleday and Brem say that there is interesting data coming in from the IARPA initiative already. So we've read about the DARPA initiative, and honestly, I have not read about an IARPA initiative, so I don't know if they're getting trickling data coming in from DARPA, because I know for a fact DARPA's been working on this at least for the last 3 or 4 years. We've covered all the stories. Or if IARPA has another big, dark, scary room somewhere and they're doing something completely different, I don't know. I'll have to look into that one. But though many of these tools that might boost our mental ability are intriguing, they are worrisome at the same time. You know, I would have to say that that's probably the understatement of the year, because there are very real safety questions. But they also force us to think about who should have access to such enhancements and how fair society will function with these tools in wide use. Like, is it going to be fair for little Johnny, who didn't get zippity zapped? And little Johnny is not as mentally spry as Susie and Janie and Aloysius, who ended up paying their money to go to the futuristic doctor called Verily. We're going to look at Verily. To get their brain zapped before kindergarten. We're seeing what sounds like a futuristic idea. Supercharging your brain, but it is a real thing, not a science fiction concept. Branches of the military are working on it, and academic institutions are studying it, and interested civilians are researching and experimenting with it on their own. It is long past time to grapple with the consequences and the potential repercussions of this research. So start zapping away, people, because here it comes. The augmented human is beginning. Many people might not want the risks involved, but most everyone wants a chance to be smarter, to be able to push their brains a little further. And the science of cognitive enhancement is poised to transform society for better, for worse. And of course, they're going to be able to make $1 bazillion at it while doing the experimentation. Now, to continue on this vein, there was a story, so that was out of the sciencealert.com, which is an Australian publication. There was a story that came out of IEEE Spectrum yesterday. This very fit young lady doing some sort of plank thing on the front page. She must be an Olympian. Olympic athletes try zapping their brains to boost performance, and this woman's got a pair of headphones on. I don't know if they're brain zapping headphones or if they're maybe just music, but a handful of athletes competing at the Summer Olympic Games in Rio, where, of course, the water is full of sewage and the hotel rooms have cockroaches. Like, could you even, I don't know if you've seen any of that, but how unbelievable that they even are holding any type of public event in Rio right now. If you haven't looked at it, it's horrifying. But a handful of athletes competing at the Summer Olympics in Rio will arrive having tried to boost their performance using an unconventional yet unbanned technology called brain stimulation. The technique, and this is the very technique that we were reading about back months ago, called transcranial direct current stimulation, involves channeling a tiny current through specific regions of the brain, making neurons in that area more likely to fire. A company behind the technology, San Francisco-based Halo Neuroscience, announced last week that at least 5 athletes competing in Rio have trained with this brain stimulation device, and the opening ceremony was, or is, this Friday. And actually it is. It is. The story was from yesterday, so the opening ceremony is today. Halo's device, called Halo Sport, is designed to increase the brain's ability to adapt to training, and athletes wear the headset while warming up or practicing their skills. And within that headset are electrodes that are pressed to the top of the head, and a small electric current is turned on, delivering 1.5 to 2 milliamps to the brain's motor cortex. This current gives the neurons in that area a boost, making them more likely to fire. The firing of neurons puts the brain in a state of hyperplasticity, making it more adaptable to learning. And that's pretty strange, because I've been reading a lot about studies in plasticity and being able to manipulate, mold the brain as if you were a child still, but now you are an adult. And they've been having all kinds of success with that, like going back with traumatic issues that maybe have caused you to have personality disorders, let's say, in your adulthood. They've been able to go back and poke and prod in the brain, zip and zap. I don't know exactly what they were doing to make these changes, but I was reading a couple pretty deep psychiatry, I don't even know what you'd call them, papers recently about successes they've been having in neuroplasticity with adults and being able to, like, literally change 40 or 50 years of growth and programming and fix, quote unquote, fix these people. Now, like, what kind of a problem is that? Somebody might come across me, diagnose me through my voice patterns on my cell phone and Skype and say, wow, that Joel, she's got a real mental issue. But don't worry about it, because we can track it all back to this, and this happening when she was a kid. And we can fix you because you're defective. Your brain's frequencies are defective. We've been looking too. They've been able to now take all kinds of readings out of the brain. They got these brand new fMRIs that can give them imaging unlike ever before for them to diagnose where your mental disease is, and then reprogram you. I don't want to be reprogrammed. I'm quite happy with my brain defects exactly the way they are. I've gotten used to them. Anyway, so we have athletes doing this as well. Causes a state of hyperplasticity, which makes it more adaptable to learning. We also saw about that pilot. Remember, they were doing that study. I don't know if they were actually zapping them, but I think it was something very similar to that, where they took people who never flew planes. They actually recorded pilots flying planes and their brain patterns, and then they somehow zapped those brain patterns into people who had never flown before and then put them into a plane in a cockpit and said, here, go, Johnny, fly. And though it wasn't 100% successful, they said that they did start to see that there was some ability to be able to transfer learning just with a few zips and zaps. So put on a seatbelt because this is absolute utter craziness. So I don't know how much I want to read about the athletes here because I really don't care, but I guess it's not illegal to zap your head, and it'll change how your body works and give you stamina, and of course how great that is in the land of soldiers, because that would be a good reason to for DARPA to be looking at this stuff. It says, and it's not just athletes who are willing to give this a go. U.S. Defense Secretary Ashton Carter said last week that military special operation teams would try out Halo Sport to see how effective it could be at increasing the skills of troops. And the plan is part of the Defense Department's DIUX program, which is the Defense Innovation Unit Experimental. That's the first time I ever heard of that one. I've been digging into this for a long time. Which aims to connect the military with innovative technology companies. And I wonder if this is part of that brand new collaboration. Maybe not, but there's a brand new collaboration where a lot of the tech giants, tech titans, have moved over into these seats with the Department of Defense to help them with their security and other types of things. London Times reported last week that the Britain's Minister of Defense may follow DIUX's lead. But that is just a rumor, so the Defense Department's going to check this out as well. And the World Anti-Doping Agency has also banned hundreds of experimental and commercial drugs deemed to enhance performance. But they have not prohibited brain stimulation because it is unclear whether or not it actually gives athletes an advantage. So I guess we will see. All right, so if that wasn't scary enough, now we got two biggies jumping into the show here. We got Google's Verily, the same Verily that's got Tommy Insel, the former director of the National Institute of Mental Health as of October of 2015. Yeah, that same Tommy Insel moved over to Google's Verily to study mental disease and how to influence it. Well, we now have Verily joining forces with GlaxoSmithKline to treat disease by what? Oh, hacking your nervous system. Yes. This is that vagus nerve thing. All tied back to DARPA. Same stuff, guys. Zippity zap, zip zap. So it's not just going to be splicing and dicing anymore. Now we're going to splice and dice and zippity zap. GlaxoSmithKline and Google's life sciences spinoff, Verily, are jointly funding a new venture that will investigate how tiny bioelectronic devices can be used to modify nerve signals and treat chronic diseases. The pair are investing $715 million over the next 7 years to fund the company, which will be known as Galvani, Galvani, Bioelectronics. And this was in honor of Luigi Galvani, who discovered what he called animal electricity in 1780. So what is this? Like your what do they call them? I can't even think. In Chinese medicine, where they do acupuncture and you have all those lines, those energy lines, qi, I believe. With research centers in San Francisco and GlaxoSmithKline's Bioscience Hub in the UK, the new company will investigate how to create small, implantable electronic systems that can be used to correct irregular nerve impulses, like in your brain. No, it doesn't say that, but come on. The device, sometimes referred to as electroceuticals. So we have nutraceuticals and now electroceuticals. Place a small sheath around a bundle of nerves, and there a miniature piece of hardware can be used to block signals or alter signals passing through the nerve fibers. That ability makes it possible to override or augment signals from the brain. Override signals from the brain or augment signals from the brain. Guys, we've lost our freedoms. Once this stuff becomes commonplace and they can put in little tiny implants, we're going to look at those because that story came out too about these little tiny implants. Once they can put little tiny implants in there and override signals that are going through your brain, they don't even need drugs anymore. Zip, zip, zip. And they're just going to have algorithms going to make sure that you are operating within parameters. And that's going to be the end of that. It's going to be very Pavlovian. It'll be like the little doggy is wearing the Zap shock collar with his wireless invisible fence outside. Every time you start having those sneaky bad thoughts, zip, zip, zap, zip. And it's going to release some sort of chemicals that'll make you go to sleep. Or that'll make you happy or make you go chase the shiny bauble over there and not pay attention to what's going on over here. This ability makes it possible to override or augment signals from the brain in order to control the organs at the end of that nerve to hopefully treat disease. Chris Pham, GlaxoSmithKline's head of bioelectronics research and the new president of Galvani Bioelectronics, told Reuters that the first such devices may be the size of a pill, while later iterations could be as small as a grain of rice. And yeah, we're going to look at those. The company's goal is to be ready for its first devices for regulatory approval within 7 years. And currently, however, there are no specific plans for Galvani Bioelectronics. A spokesperson from GlaxoSmithKline told MIT Technology Review, which is what we're reading right now, that the company will look to, quote, tackle a wide range of chronic diseases that are inflammatory. Ding! Inflammation is the root of all disease. Metabolic and endocrine disorders, which of course include type 2 diabetes, but nothing more specific yet. Yeah, they're going to go after it all. Guys, we've already looked at them engineering synthetic gut bacteria to be able to quote-unquote cure disease with funding from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But we know that the gut bacteria has a direct connect to the vagus nerve. This is this exact nerve that we're talking about right now. That has a direct connect to all your major organ systems as well as the brain and can influence brain chemicals. So we got Bill and Melinda Gates coming at it from the gut. And we got GlaxoSmithKline and Google coming at it from the brain. How disturbing is this to you? Because I know I am not buying any of this. I am not stepping up for any of this. My kid's not stepping up for any of this. Run away screaming. This is the complete, utter takeover of any of our last freedoms that we thought we had in our heads, in our bodies. Our ability to freely locomote, is that a word? To move around unhindered. Even if it's just in your own mind, won't even exist anymore. GlaxoSmithKline already has experience in the area of electroceuticals. Montsev Schlaoui, chairman of vaccines at GlaxoSmithKline and the chair of the new the company's new board publicly acknowledged GSK's involvement in the field in a 2013 paper in Nature. And now it funds as many as 80 external researchers working in the area, according to Bloomberg. Verily, Google's spinoff, is a newcomer to electrified medicine, but don't worry about it because Verily, being part of Google took in four DARPA people over the last year or two. So they are well positioned with the research and the researchers. But Verily has been ambitious in other ventures, which include embeddable glucose sensors, yes, and your electronic contact lenses for diabetes patients. All that said, Galvani Bioelectronics is working in a relatively young field. And in a New York Times article, Salawi explained that his initial reaction to the suggestion that the nervous system could be hacked to treat disease was one of suspicion. He says, come on, you're going to give a shock and it changes the immune system? He was very skeptical. But clearly, both Verily and GSK have been won over by the approach. And now Galvani Bioelectronics has to show that their confidence is well placed. So, dun, dun, dun. Here it comes out of Medical Express. Wireless implantable sensors the size of a grain of sand could have wide use in what? Oh, body monitoring. Yes, that's what it's all about. It's about curing disease, step right up, but it's also about body monitoring, becoming part of the Internet of Things. I've been talking about this for a long time, people, and it is coming now. University of California, Berkeley, ding, 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 engineers have built the very first dust-sized wireless sensor that can be implanted into the body, bringing closer the day when a Fitbit-like device, ding, ding, didn't I tell you the Fitbit was the first step, that could monitor internal nerves, muscles, or organs in real time. Because these batteryless sensors could also be used to stimulate nerves and muscles, the technology also opens the door to quote-unquote electroceuticals to treat disorders such as epilepsy or to stimulate the immune system or tamp down on inflammation. This so-called neural dust, which the team implanted into the muscles and peripheral nerves of rats, is unique in that ultrasound is used both to power and read out the measurements. Now, interesting, because we also discovered way back when that ultrasound was a way that they discovered to open up the blood-brain barrier, to be able to get nanotechnology into the brain. They also found ultrasound was a way to open that blood-brain barrier and start breaking up plaques in the beginnings of Alzheimer's. I don't know about this, guys. This is really mad science, and they are going to start using it on people without even a blink of an eye. They already are encouraging those DIY hackers. Hey, people out there doing it, we can't stop it. Just be careful. But we think it works, so hey, wink. Let us know what happens as you're zapping yourself. Ultrasound technology is already well developed for hospital use, and ultrasound vibrations can penetrate nearly anywhere in the body, unlike radio waves, say researchers. I think the long-term prospects for neural dust are not only within nerves and the brain, but much broader, says Michael Maharbits, an associate professor of electrical engineering and computer sciences and one of the study's two main authors. Having access to in-body telemetry. In-body telemetry, guys. This isn't like wartime telemetry. This is in-body telemetry. Has never been possible because there has never been a way to put something super tiny, so super deep into the body. But now I can take a speck of nothing and park it next to a nerve or an organ in your GI tract or muscle, and I can read out the data. Marabitz Neuroscientist Jose Carmina, we've run into him a couple times, a professor of electrical engineering and computer sciences and a member of the Helen Willis Neuroscience Institute, and their colleagues will report their findings in the August 3rd issue of the journal Neuron. The sensors, which researchers have already shrunk to a 1 millimeter cube, which is about the size of a large grain of sand, contains a piezoelectric crystal that converts ultrasound vibrations from outside the body into electricity to power a tiny onboard transistor that is in contact with the nerve or muscle fiber. A voltage spike in the fiber alters the circuit and the vibration of the crystal, which then changes the echo detected by the ultrasound receiver, typically the same device that generates the vibrations. This slight change is called a backscatter and allows them to determine the voltage. This team is now working to miniaturize this device further, find a more biocompatible material, and improve the surface transceiver that sends and receives the ultrasounds, ideally using beam steering technology to focus the sound waves on individual motes. Now remember, they were calling this neurodust in motes, and this is coming out of the University of California, Berkeley, which I believe, we first read about motes and neurodust. We were looking at some of HP's research, and HP was partnering with one of the universities in California. I wonder if this is that smart dust that started in some of HP's research. I don't know. This is beyond frightening for me. Okay, little Johnny, we're going to put it right in this little vaccine-y thing here that's not even a vaccine anymore. I can just use high pressure to put it right into your arm. It won't hurt a bit. We'll just be able to see what's happening with that knee or your brain, what you're thinking. Using beam steering technology to focus the sound waves on your individual motes. And they are now building little backpacks for rats to hold the ultrasound transceiver that will record the data from the implanted motes. So just like that little pill that I've talked about that my friend had to take to get an upper GI one time. It's got little cameras in it, and then you put the little Wi-Fi clippy thing right on your belt, and as it's going down through, it's taking 10 bazillion pictures a second and capturing them on the flash card on your belt loop. Well, this will be about the same. You can wear a little backpack like the rats, and it'll be able to collect all the information on the little motes that are implanted on your muscles and in your brain. They are also working to expand the mote's ability to detect non-electrical signals as well, such as oxygen and hormone levels. The vision is to implant these neural dust motes anywhere in the body and have a patch over the implanted site, sending ultrasonic waves to wake up and receive necessary information from the mote for the desired therapy you want. Eventually, you would use multiple implants in one patch that would ping each implant individually or all simultaneously. Marabitz and Carmina conceived of the idea of neurodust about 5 years ago, so they're saying they did it. But I pointed out to you guys a long time ago that back in the, I would say, late 90s, early 2000s, HP was already way down that path of development. But attempts to power an implantable device and read out the data using radio waves were very disappointing. Radio attenuates very quickly with distance inside tissue, and so communicating with devices deep in the body would be difficult without using potentially damaging high-intensity radiation. So they came up with the idea of ultrasound, and their first study demonstrated that the fundamental physics of ultrasound allow for very, very small implants that could record and communicate neural data that's in the brain. Ultrasound is much more efficient when you are targeting devices that are on the millimeter scale or smaller and that are embedded deep into the body. You can get a lot of power into it and a lot more efficient transfer of energy and communication when using ultrasound as opposed to electromagnetic waves, which has been the go-to method for wirelessly transmitting power to miniature implants. But now that you have a reliable, minimally invasive neural pickup in your body, this technology could become the driver for a whole new gamut of applications. And don't worry about it because we got Google, Glaxo, SmithKline, and DARPA all in the middle of it. So it'll all be good for you. And you will become part of the Internet of Things. And I don't know, can we add, let's see, we added insult to injury, and now we're going to take salt and pour it in the wounds. That same National Institute of Health that we love to hate, the one that's working with 23andMe and collecting DNA on everyone to make pharmaceuticals. The National Institute of Mental Health that sent over Tommy Insel to go work for Verily to start figuring out how to diagnose mental conditions on the spectrum through things such as smart apps and voice patterns. Yes, the National Institute of Health now plans to lift funding. Now plans to lift the funding ban on what? Oh, human-animal hybrid chimeras. Again, this is out of the MIT Technology Review. This is not Billy Joe Bob's blog. This is some real stuff that's going on right now. The U.S. could ease a moratorium on fusing humans and animal embryos. But don't worry, because we're still going to restrict human-monkey combinations. So remember, we had talked a while back about the pigs that they were using. They had injected human DNA in some of the pig cells, and they were growing human organs inside pigs for seeing how they would work for transplant. Well, I don't remember. There was a name for that. Zeno something. Should the U.S. government use tax dollars to fund scientists fusing human stem cells into early animal embryos in order to create chimeras that are part human or part pig or part mouse? Well, the U.S. National Institute of Health says the answer is yes. The agency announced on Thursday that it plans to lift a moratorium that since last year has blocked taxpayer money from flowing to this type of hot-button research. What? Guys, I've said this a million times. Ethics are out a window. And how just a year ago, 6 months ago, we were crying about how unethical it was to be experimenting on humans with untested technology. And here we are. I mean, we are just past the halfway point of 2016. And we're talking about using taxpayer dollars to make human-animal chimeras. I knew something was up when my kid came home from school with a debate question, which, by the way, I still have that paper sitting here on my desk in the corner. Should doctors transplant pigs' organs into human bodies? And they went through this whole thing. And at the very end, they had actually talked about human-animal chimeras. I mean, this is the future, people. We are going to have minotaurs someday. I don't want to see a minotaur soldier walking around with his laser beam eyes and his fangs and wings. And this is beyond frightening. This is the Isle of Dr. Moreau on steroids, funded by taxpayer dollars. Carrie Wolanitz, the National Institute of Health's Associate Director for Policy, said experiments to inject human stem cells into early-stage animal embryos, quote, are really important and exciting to understand how disease works, she says, and to, of course, explore new medical treatments. But at the same time, the agency is proposing stricter controls on certain experiments most likely to lead to monkey men or other bad science fiction, so they don't see a problem with pig men or mice men. I mean, what? And I was looking at some stuff I had posted a long time ago yesterday, and there was one showing how close DNA between pigs and humans actually is. And they were questioning whether or not we had come from somewhere along the way, the same evolutionary chain. I can't eat pork usually, and when I just look at ham, it kind of makes me feel kind of ill because it does look sort of human, doesn't it? all nice and pink and stuff. I don't know. It just bothers me. So we'll allow with pigs and mice, put in human stem cells, see what happens, but it's all in the name of curing disease. Last September, the National Institute of Health surprised the scientific community by slapping a broad moratorium on funding any research in which human stem cells are injected into human embryos. And thank God, because at least somebody had one shred of ethics and caution. But hey, what happened? But then, by January, the agency knew what MIT Technology Review reported in January, which is that such experiments were already underway in the U.S., and we did read that MIT Technology Review story, with several dozen pigs and sheep carrying fetuses potentially containing a mix of human cells were already in development. So at that time, none of the animals have been brought to term out of scientific caution, but scientists carrying out the work at the Salk Institute and at Stanford University say that the fetal animals would only contain, at most, a small proportion of human cells. And remember, too, we had already seen that they had taken breast milk genes out of humans and had spliced them into cows, clone cows no less, in China. And back when I first started doing radio, we're talking 2011, I had run across a story out of the UK where they had already found human animal chimeras that were growing in petri dishes. There were like 150 of them back in that time. So like I've said before, just because something is official and it made the news doesn't mean it hasn't been going on for a very long time down scary hallways behind dark, frightening doors. The human-animal mixtures are not new. Wollenitz noted in a statement that biomedical researchers, quote, have created and used animal models containing human cells for decades to gain insight into biology and disease, and scientists often grow human tumors instead of mice, for example. But this new research is different because potent human stem cells are being injected directly into very early stage animal embryos, consisting of just a couple dozen cells, and theoretically, the human cells could then end up contributing to any part of the animal in any amount. So you can have literally, like, talking human-sized mice. What? Oh, my God. I just don't even, like, every day it gets worse. What's the point of such experiments? Well, good freaking question. One is that it might be possible to create an otherwise normal pig whose entire heart or whole liver is made from human cells, and that would be a great new way to farm human organs for transplants. Don't worry about the poor living pigs who have no rights, I guess. These mutant creatures that we've created in our own image just to splice and dice and cut them up so you can have a new organ. What? We already have being able to create pluripotent stem cells out of your own skin cells. Turn them into any organ you want, coaxing them chemically, and then 3D printing them on a scaffold after they've 3D imaged your organ to be able to duplicate it. So I don't see what the purpose of this is. Leave the poor piggies and the mousies alone. Says this agency also wants to explicitly bar any of these human-animal chimeras from being allowed to reproduce. Yeah, isn't that the way it's going to be? Once you're genetically modified, you will no longer be able to reproduce. You will have to get a license, and you will have to get permission to get eggs from the egg and sperm bank. And then we might allow you to have one perfect child. At least that was my addition, but that's the way it's going to be. The very risk, which is very remote, but which could have disastrous consequences for public confidence in science, is that if two chimeras mated and then gave rise to a human fetus, that could happen if their sperm or egg were human. Guys, this really is a brave new world. And step right up, because lo and behold, we have mad science gone mad. We have Zika spreading. Oh my God, the humanity everywhere. This disease that never caused any issues, and all of a sudden it is an actual pandemic. I just saw a story yesterday saying, oh, it's spreading north now everywhere. And we cannot get our act together to pass this $1 billion spending bill. But don't worry about it, because the first trials for the new Zika vaccine is complete. And it offered complete protection from the Zika virus in monkeys. Yes. Zika now being transmitted by mosquitoes in the continental U.S. and Rio. Having too many issues to count, even on top of their months-long outbreak, has been a pretty scary time for those living in affected areas. And yes, in Rio, Brazil, they've been launching Oxitec genetically modified mosquitoes everywhere, and now they're launching them here as well. Researchers have trialed 3 vaccine candidates, and they were inoculating 20 rhesus monkeys, and after 2 weeks, none of the monkeys showed any adverse effects whatsoever. The vaccines protected against both the Brazilian and the Puerto Rican strains of Zika. The vaccines were also developed as part of a collaboration between the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and Harvard Medical School. Yes, Harvard Medical School, where they want to be able to create the first synthetic human and the shape-shifting DNA vaccines. Yeah, don't worry about it. It won't hurt you. It won't hurt you. So now the U.S. government has announced that they are ready to start the very first human tests of the Zika vaccine. Wow, wasn't that amazingly fast? It was. Scientists are close behind an outbreak of a mosquito-spread disease in the U.S. with a possible fix. The U.S. government this past Tuesday, for the first time, tested its experimental vaccine, because it's such an emergency, against the Zika virus on an American volunteer. The start of this vaccine trial at the National Institute of Health in Maryland comes as officials were racing to contain this outbreak of the Zika virus in Miami, because we have 4 cases. Oh no, but now it's up to 14. The vaccine could roll back the epidemic from the U.S. borders step right up. But it won't be months yet until we know whether or not it is safe. The studies involve a type of vaccine called the DNA vaccine, in which genes from the virus are shot under high pressure into a person's arm. And right now, this will be the very first DNA vaccine that could go into commercialization. All right, guys, have an awesome weekend. Make sure you stick around for lots of radio. Lonnie Clark is live up next, and I will catch up with you on Monday. Everybody take care.